preaching the gospel. I keep hearing the term preach the gospel. And I guess I used it myself for many years. But that is really not enough. That statement is not enough. I think we need to go back and read the statement again. It's found in Matthew chapter 24. Matthew chapter 24, verse 14. A lot of people are talking about the last days, and everyone's talking about, doom and get ready for the coming of Jesus and all these wonderful statements. And I think in many cases they have their place. But I'm not sure, based on my limited knowledge of Scripture, that I can honestly say that Jesus is coming soon. I cannot say that based on Scripture, and I'll show you in a minute why. But in this chapter of Matthew chapter 24, a question is asked that everybody asks in every generation. The question is found in verse 2 and 3. The question is, when will the end of the world come? Now, everybody wants to know that. Even the atheists want to know that. The agnostic wants to know that. Everybody's kind of have their own theories of the end of the world, the end of our age. Some think there's going to be a meteorite that's going to hit the earth and it's going to cause a great tidal wave, so they make a movie out of that. Some of them think there's going to be a big bang or some explosion or something that's going to destroy the world. Others think that there's going to be some kind of plasmatic explosion of planets colliding. Or some believe that there's going to be maybe a war that's going to end all wars and all these things. But the disciples asked Jesus, when will the end come? And he told them. Now what amazed me was, religious people always think that you cannot know when the end is going to come. I was taught that. I guess you were too. No man knows the day, no man knows the hour. Well, maybe we don't know the day nor the hour, but we know when the end will come. Let me tell you when the end will come. Matter of fact, let him tell you. First of all, he answers the question in that chapter. He says there'll be wars, rumors of wars, there'll be pestilence, there'll be famine. Famine means economic problems. Then he says there will be false Christs. There'll be many religions. So we got a lot of religions around with many, messiahs. We got we got 4 major religions in the world. He said there'll be many of those things. Then he says there'll be kingdom against kingdom and all kinds of nation against nations. But then notice what he says. The end is not yet. See, the minute 9/11 takes place, everybody starts preaching, he's coming. He never says a war will bring him back. He never says that economic crisis will bring him back. He never says that pestilence like AIDS will bring him back. He never says that there will be earthquakes to bring him back or there will be farming to bring him back. He says the end is not yet. When you see those things, he said, don't panic. Matter of fact, he says, let not your heart be troubled. The end is not yet. Why? Do you think God would allow a terrorist to bring him back? What kind of God is that? Is he in charge of the world or what? I mean, God have to let an earthquake bring him back? No. Let me read what he says will bring him back. Are you ready? It's found in verse 14. You don't need a theologian to figure it out. He says the end of the world will come when this happens. Number one, he says when this gospel, not just the gospel. See, we keep saying the gospel. But he says when this gospel, which one? Of the kingdom is preached into all the world as a testimony to every nation, then the end will come. Did he tell us when the end will come? Did he tell us when the end will come? Yes. Come on now, don't get nervous. I mean, the Bible tells you when the end will come. There it is. He didn't say the end will come when there's a war. Now either Jesus is lying or some preachers are lying. Let's deal with this for a minute. Jesus said the end will come when this gospel of the kingdom. Now why does he say this gospel? Because he knew there'd be many other gospels. See, most of the church don't even know the gospel. I'm sorry to say that, we know a lot of stuff. We know a lot of sermons, but do you really know about the kingdom? Have you ever sat in church recently and heard 5 messages on the kingdom in your church? How many? I went to seminary. I got a degree in theology. I do. And there was not one class on the kingdom. Many of you went to seminaries already, and you got degrees in God theology, but there was no training in the kingdom. They taught you about all kinds of theories and hermeneutics and homiletics, but there was no session on the very thing he told us to preach. The kingdom. The only gospel that Jesus said that we are to go into all those nations and take is the gospel of what? The kingdom. Then he says what? Then the end will come. So obviously he's still waiting for us to even get the gospel. Interesting. All right. Let me pull this together with a few thoughts. There's nothing more powerful on earth than an idea. Ideas create everything. The chair you sit on was an idea. The clothes on your back was an idea. The necktie on your neck or the purse you carry used to be an idea in someone's head. Am I right? Everything. This ministry used to be an idea. These cameras were ideas. Someone had an idea. Matter of fact, ideas live where? In your mind. I call ideas mental pregnancy. That is why people say this is my brainchild. Can brains have children? Yes. Ideas are so powerful they control the world. As a matter of fact, the world is ran by dead people. We go to college to study dead people's ideas. Libraries are filled with dead people's ideas, and we pay thousands of dollars to spend 4 years to study dead people's ideas, and then they give us a degree in dead people's ideas. And they call it education. Now let's think about this. Ideas are so powerful that God himself invented them. An idea, when it is conceived initially, it is called a precept. Everybody say precept. A precept is an original idea. When an idea becomes conceived as a thought, it is called a concept. A concept is a conceived idea that you begin to believe. Now, concepts live in your mind, and concepts determine your picture of what you think words mean. That's why concepts are dangerous. Why am I talking about this? Because this is why we are not being effective in the world as believers. In the 1960s, when I was a teenager, and some of you who are a little older would remember this, if someone asked you for bread, what would you give them in 1960? Money. You remember those days? Yeah. Now, if you ask for bread today, you'd probably get a loaf of bread, you know, something to eat. But in 1960s, when they used the word bread, say, can I have some bread? You had to think twice. What do they mean in 1960? And you give them money. Because the concept of money became bread. That's how powerful concepts are. Now, if today you ask somebody for bread and they give you money, you would still be waiting for bread. Why? Because you would have what we call a misconception. A misconception takes place when what's in my mind is not what's in your mind. That's called a misconception. So if I use a word, I know what I mean by the word, but if you don't have the same concept in your mind, you will have a misconception of the word. I'm trying to make a point here. So in the book of Psalms, David prayed a prayer, and it's a powerful prayer. The prayer that David prayed was, oh God, teach me your precepts. Now, most of you read that and don't even think about what he means. He said, God, I don't want to know your thoughts. I want to know your original thoughts. A precept is what you thought about before you thought. David says, I want to know what's the picture in your mind, not the words you speak. I want to know what the words mean in your mind, God. This is very deep. See, why is this important? Because you see, if God says something to you, but you don't have the same picture that's in his mind, then you will receive a misconception, and you can build your whole life on a misconception and create a religion on a misconception and call it Christianity. There's a book that I love. It's called the Bible. Let me say some things about this book. Number one, this book is not a religious book. This book is about a king, a kingdom, and his kids.